I am an agent for Global Marine Insurance, which is based out of Traverse City, Michigan. They're probably one of the 6 or 10 premier insurance agencies in the country.
Yeah, familiar with them. That's great.
2 people started the company back in the late 80s again. A lot of the people that are there have been there almost the whole life of the company. We have a cross-section of U.S.-based carriers. They're A+ rated companies, along with access to the Lloyd's markets. The insurance piece actually has become a little more challenging, honestly, in the last probably 5-7 years.
And what's affected that?
One is the hurricane losses. That has been a big factor in losses that were paid out in with some of these major storms. And it's not just only the U.S. piece of it, it's the natural disasters around the world. You can take mudslides in Europe, you can take a tsunami in Japan, you can take the wildfires in the western part of the United States. That all affects the insurance pool and how much money.
Yeah, if you're looking to buy a boat and you're looking for insurance, you're saying that even if they're not going to have the boat in hurricane country, that's affecting their ability to get insurance?
It's affecting premiums, and also the carriers, they tend to become a little more conservative when after they've paid out those tremendous losses in the billions, they tend to pull back a little bit because they're at that point becoming a little bit risk adverse.
So we're not worried about wildfires affecting boats, we're worried about wildfires affecting the insurance company, which makes them more conservative.
And in turn affects the premiums.
The whole field. Got it. Thank you.
So, but as far as availability of insurance, if you're up to, again, that 40-foot range, we're kind of back to that same number, a first-time buyer should not have a real issue with getting insurance with a U.S.-based carrier. Where we see the challenges are when we have people that are making a sizable jump in vessel. They're going from a 35-foot XYZ to a 55-foot trawler. That's a pretty big jump. For the carriers, they don't like to see normally more than about 12 to 15 feet of jump. That's their comfort level. So that being said, there are avenues, which is where what you do comes into play, is the carriers are looking for some level of training for those new buyers at that point. That number, as far as number of hours, varies depending on what that person's previous experience is. I've had people that have owned a 35-foot vessel. They've taken the boat north-south in the intercoastal. They've chartered for maybe 5 years in the Caribbean. They can document all that information. They're going to be required for less hours than somebody that's jumping into a 60-foot trawler who's never done anything but lake boating. Number of hours, to try to kind of give you a range, and for anybody that's thinking about this, is normally I would say we're somewhere probably between 25 hours and 100 hours.
Of training. Of focused training.
And that doesn't necessarily need to be on the vessel that they're buying, but it needs to be in a comparable vessel to the vessel that they're buying. So if you have an avenue through the vessels that you have available to you that will give that person training at that same size range, that goes a long ways towards shrinking down that number of hours that they have to do. And what we're looking for is not, I'll use the Atlantic coast here, or use Florida for example, is not 25 hours of running up and down the intercoastal. And you're not getting any real world experience at that point. What we like to see, and what works out a lot of times here on the East Coast, is a person may be buying the vessel in the Great Lakes. They're bringing it back to the Chesapeake and then ultimately on to Florida. And in particular in a trawler, I'll say to them, well, if you look at this, by the time you get back from the Great Lakes and you get to the Chesapeake, you'll probably have 2/3 of that training done.
So actually doing it as not just going in and out training in a local area, but actually more of a cruising scenario.
Because what the carrier's looking for is they want to see that you've experienced a little bit of everything.
Got it.
That you've experienced different sea conditions. You've dealt with, coming out of the Great Lakes, the lock system. You've dealt with offshore. You've dealt with the fog in New England. You've dodged lobster pots in New England.
Yeah.
You've dealt with running inlets. You've been in the Chesapeake Bay. We have, thunderstorms. They want to see you having experienced a multitude of conditions, and that a captain at that point is comfortable signing off on your proficiency.
Yeah.
To operate the vessel on your own. One thing I always recommend to owners, and I'm assuming you are doing this also with what you do, is we like to see the husband and wife mutually have the training.
Very good. Yes.
We want to see, and I used to teach training before I was in this end of the business. I was with a boat dealership with large yachts, and part of what we did is we taught both the husband and the wife, both parties, about how to operate the vessel. We would switch roles. The spouse would run the boat, the husband would handle lines, and we used to laugh about it, and you can probably relate to this. It's like, don't be yelling at your spouse about not getting that line for you if you can't put the boat where she needs it to be.
Yeah, and vice versa, yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
So I encourage people that if they're looking at doing this, both parties need to be involved.
Yeah.
And they need to understand the operation, both pieces of it, and the operation of the boat. And I go back to, if your husband falls and breaks his ankle or breaks a leg, are you capable of getting that boat home?
Right.
You need to know how to work the radio. You need to know how to get the boat home. You need to understand the basic navigation. And you need to be able to dock the boat.
Yes.
Kind of thing. So I think that's very important, and it makes for a much more enjoyable experience.
It certainly does. You know, we train so many people, and almost everyone that does training with us, they want that. They want to both be operating the boat together. It is more fun. It is much safer. And the thing you mentioned earlier about the actual cruising experience in all those different scenarios, I love the way you described that and the value of that for the insurance, because again, people that come to us and work with us, they're not out to check boxes. They want those experiences. They want those skills. They're at least as motivated as the insurance company. And that's the beauty of it, is it gives you what you really need to be operating your boat the way you want to operate your boat. So that's a great description. Thank you.
Sure. I would say on the insurance piece, again, up to that 40-foot range, insurance is readily available with a multitude of carriers. Above that, as we get into larger vessels, then it narrows down the players, so to speak. But we do have good avenues for coverage. On the Atlantic coastal side of things here, obviously we have the hurricane season piece of it. Most of what we do is north-south, as far as Eastport, Maine, for example, or St. John's, New Brunswick to the Florida and Bahamas. That's kind of a standard coverage package here with date restriction to be out of Florida during hurricane season.
Okay, yeah.
Some carriers use Cape Hatteras. Again, questions we have is like, well, I want to keep my vessel in Florida full-time, but I live in Idaho.
Yeah.
That's probably not happening, just to be realistic.
Yeah.
Regardless, short of you having a full-time captain on the vessel, and or that vessel being set up to go into one of the Cat 5 rated buildings in Florida. They don't like to see absentee ownership, is what it comes down to.
Right. So what if they had like a yacht service that watches over your boat?
That used to be a viable option. What happened is, again, going back to all the losses 6, 7, 10 years ago, is these management companies were taking on more vessels than they could handle.
Yeah.
And when push came to shove and XYZ storm was coming, they got to 4 out of the 8 vessels that they were responsible for. And the other 4 were left to their own and to their own demise. So that really caused the carriers to pull back, so that unless you have a captain dedicated to that vessel, period, that's his only job, they're not going to allow for the absentee ownership.
Got it.
I'll jump back for a second on the captain's training piece. Is when I say 75 hours or 100 hours or 200 hours, whatever that number is, that doesn't necessarily mean that that captain has to be sitting on board the vessel 24/7. What we look at is, and what the carriers are looking for is, when that vessel's underway, is that captain is on board.
Right.
We have the uniqueness here, and I'm sure that it would apply where you are, obviously on the West Coast or let's say New England, is we have people that are going through this process. and the captain will get on board with the vessel. They'll run 6 hours that day to somewhere else, and the captain has somebody picking him up at the other end. He goes back home for the 3 days. The family, the couple, has the boat to themselves for those 3 or 4 days, and he comes back and jumps back on board the boat and takes them back to home port, so to speak.
Yeah.
So as I have people say like, well, gosh, I don't want a captain sitting on the boat while I'm trying to enjoy it with my family.
Right.
We're not asking for people to do that. So
the hours that are counted are those hours
underway
with
Correct.
the captain.
With the
Yes.
captain.
Got it.
And we have internally, documents, kind of a blueprint of what we're looking for. I'm sure yours is very extensive, and I will say the more detail, the better. I've seen some captains do an actual recordation via snapshots of the GPS over a period of days that shows the actual track of where they went.
Sweet.
In conjunction with the documentation of Joe and Mary did XYZ today. We went through these different conditions. They docked the boat. They came alongside and we got fuel. We navigated XYZ bridges.
Right.
We navigated commercial traffic. It's building a picture for the carriers is what we're doing.
Awesome.
So
I have a question related to that. So one of the things at Shearwater University we offer that is less common among training captains on board is we're accredited with U.S. powerboating and U.S. sailing, so we do both sides. So for example, when someone buys a powerboat and we train them on that boat, we end up, in addition to everything you're talking about that we've trained them through, all these standards, they end up with internationally recognized certifications. On the powerboat side, you go through the basic powerboat cruising, the inshore powerboat cruising, night operations, and then they get their international proficiency certificate. Does that certification aspect of it contribute to the insurance side?
Depending on the carrier, it will affect what we refer to as the discretionary credits.
Okay.
The carriers all have, you basically plug the information into their system, it generates a quote, but then you get into the gray areas where the underwriter at the carrier, based on those kind of accreditations, that's where you get into the discretionary credit.
I see.
It's not huge, but it's 5%, it's 7% if they see those accreditations. It also may help them with making a judgment call, again, back to if they're making this fairly sizable jump, but there's real world experience accreditations there. That does come into play. That will affect an underwriter's decision-making process.
Good,
so yes, it's important.
All right. Anything else on the insurance side that people should be aware of?
I would say people don't be afraid that you can't get insurance. That concept or that thought process, again, forums can get out of control over the last 5-7 years, is like, oh, you're not going to be able to get insurance. Oh, you're not going to be able to get insurance. That's not the case. Are there going to be some challenges in terms of getting insurance, depending on how big a jump in size that you're going to be doing? Yes, but there are solutions to that. You just have to be willing to work through the process with somebody like you and with your company to get to that end game, so to speak, to get the point that you're signed off on. So the insurance market so far, and again, this is October 2025, the hurricane season has been calm, and we are just hoping and praying that we get through the next 6 weeks or so, 2 months, and it stays that way. And that little by little, the carriers are starting to ease up. We're seeing changes in that some of the carriers that were Cape Hatteras as that north-south restriction are now bringing that back down to the Florida-Georgia border.
I see.
Again, here on the East Coast, which is helpful for people who want to go south for the winter time, as they can jump off out of the Chesapeake. They can get to Charleston, South Carolina, for example, hang out there for 2 weeks, and then make that move on into Florida. So the market's stable. It's just one comment I would make on the insurance side to anybody looking for insurance: pick a carrier, pick an agency, and an agent that you're comfortable with. It's one thing to talk to a couple different agents or agencies, let's say at a boat show, but pick one and work with them.
Yeah.
Because, and most people don't know this, but the way the insurance industry works is again, we're back to just like the banks, there's probably 10 or 12 A-rated carriers, insurance carriers in the U.S. and a couple Lloyd's markets. We all end up going to the same carriers. And whoever is first in blocks everybody else out. So it doesn't make any sense to go to 3 different agencies, give that agent your information, because they're all going to try to go to the same carrier. And the first agent in is going to get the quote. Nobody else will be allowed to get that quote. So you're really spinning your wheels, so to speak. Again,
interesting. So you don't want to ask for a quote until you've decided who you want to work with?
I would pick an agent, again, based on talk to an agent like myself, see what level of expertise they have, are they able to answer your questions, and get comfortable with that agent. Let them do the work for you. Because typically what I'll do, I will, again, coming from the boating, and I always tell people coming into this is first time I'm talking to them, as again, we live, eat, and breathe this stuff. We're boaters ourselves. So I ask a whole wide range of questions that probably a lot of agents won't. They're just checking the box. Get comfortable with that agent, that he understands what you're looking for, and that he or she seems to be truly interested in trying to help you. Let us do the work for you at that point. Because I won't go to 10 different carriers for you. I'll pick 2 or 3. Okay, they fit in this box, they don't fit in this box. And let us then work those carriers to get you the best quote. And it may not be at the end of the day. I tell people, I'll probably come back to you with 2 or 3 choices, and the one that's the cheapest may not be the best one for you. We'll evaluate coverages. What navigation options? Does this carrier have better ancillary coverages? They're all basically the same in terms of you want to be looking for agreed value, meaning that God forbid you have a total loss. If that boat's insured for $500,000, it could be 7 years from now and you still own the boat and you have a total loss, you're going to get $500,000 back. That's what that agreed value piece refers to. You don't want actual cash value, because that means that that vessel is depreciated and you could end up down the road at some point where, again, total loss, the carrier could determine, well, we think that boat's only worth 60 cents on the dollar. So you want agreed value. Deductibles, I get that question a lot of times. What kind of deductible should we be looking for? In combination with the banking side, the maximum deductible that most lenders will agree to or allow is 2 to 3%. I'm personally not a fan of big hull deductibles because there's not that much difference in premium. You're increasing your exposure dramatically for a very small savings in premium over a year. But again, that's a personal choice. Some people say, well, I'm okay with a higher deductible. I'm willing to take that risk. That's fine. Liability coverage, I'm just kind of hitting a couple of highlights here that people should be aware of. Anything over $100,000, we recommend do $500,000 in liability coverage. We get into that $750,000 range or more, $1 million is recommended. Liability coverage as part of your policy is inexpensive. Some of the other ones, oil spill and pollution liability coverage is mandated by the government. It's going up over the years. I believe off the top of my head it's like $1,074,000 and some odd number. How they come up with these odd numbers, I don't know, but that is mandated with every policy. So you'll see that. A lot of the larger policies are going to have environmental damage coverage, and people go, well, what's that for? The example I will use here on the East Coast is Florida, or for example, the Bahamas. You run aground and damage the coral reef, that's an environmental claim. And that is $25,000, $50,000 is what that coverage is with a lot of the larger policies, because they're going to want to repair that coral reef. And that claim is you'll have protection for that. A lot of the other coverages are ancillary, medical payments, personal property. That's all kind of standard across the board. There's no real uniqueness among any of the carriers. There is again on the East Coast, hurricane deductible. If you're in a hurricane zone, you can expect a 10% named storm deductible. And they're going to want to see a hurricane plan. That you have a plan of what you're going to do. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to haul the boat out, that you're going to go to great extent, but just that you have a plan. In conjunction with that, most of the carriers are doing what they refer to as hurricane haul out coverage, meaning that, and that's typically a couple $1,000s, that if they're incentivizing you to spend the money to move your boat to safe harbor, they'd rather pay you a $1,500 haul out and blocking and storage claim for a week than they would pay out than a total loss. So they're encouraging you to do that.
That's a good policy. Great. Can I circle back to it's a personal professional interest of mine is what has driven insurance carriers to either pull out of recreational marine and charter or restrict it more. And you mentioned the hurricanes. To what extent has just the casualties of inexperienced boaters played into that?
It has played into that. I would say, again, going back to that kind of 5, 7, 10-year time frame, at one point the carriers were chasing premium.
Yeah.
It was all about premium. Premiums were lower than they really probably should have been because they were all in competition with each other. Competition leads to lowering of standards. So people were getting insured that shouldn't have been getting insured. Vessels were allowed to be in cat-prone areas that shouldn't have been allowed in the cat-prone areas. So
cat-prone area being?
Catastrophic.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Shouldn't use those acronyms. So that desire of chasing premium and dollars drove the carriers to be more aggressive than they probably should have been and more lenient. As a result, then when you got into these major catastrophes and/or that they saw, again to your point about the captain's training, at one point that was very loose. And what we were seeing, what started happening is people were getting signed off on that shouldn't have gotten signed off on. And over a period of time, the carriers are looking at these losses and they're going, well, why did this happen? And all of a sudden that picture starts to build out as, okay, there are people on these vessels that shouldn't be on these vessels. We're just going to cut this off. And that happened.
Yeah.
It basically, as you probably well know, it just went away. It didn't matter what kind of training you had. If you were more than a 12 to 15 foot jump, it wasn't happening. So yes, to your point, is it was a combination of factors of lowering of standards, which relates to people getting signed off and that shouldn't have been signed off on, or somebody getting insured on a 45 foot vessel that had never had a boat before. Then in combination with the natural disasters, it just drove the carriers just to retrench. And we've seen carriers come and go. Major carriers that were in it, doing big vessels, doing West Coast, East Coast, Bahamas, Caribbean navigation. But even us on the agent side and the agency side, we're going, this risk is not, this is not a good way to approach this. You see the writing on the wall. They were overly aggressive, and as a result, 2 years later, they were gone. And now we're having to remarket those people. Right now, the insurance industry is strong. The carriers that are in it now are stable. They've been in it for a while. There's good underwriting. Carriers like Chubb, for example, Travelers, AIG. Those are carriers that have been in the business a long time. So the market's solid right now.
So they've kind of figured out the formula to lower their risk so they can come back in.
Right. So they're more conservative. They've been through the thick and thin over the years. They've been through. If we had a major hurricane this fall yet, and Chubb had X amount of exposure in Florida, they're not going to leave the market.
I see. Because they're managing that exposure.
They're managing that exposure.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. Great. Well, any last words? This has been fantastic.
Well, I would just say, just look to a company such as yourself. If you're looking at making this major jump in a vessel,
or maybe a first time,
take the time, do the training. The experience that you will have ongoing in boating will be so much better. It's not only just about the cost factor in terms of being able to get insurance, for example, but just the enjoyment that you'll get out of it will be such a better experience. I think that's one of the things. What we try to do as a company is we want to become part of your experience. This is supposed to be an uplifting, fun adventure that you're starting out on. We want to help you get there.
Great.
And that you you enjoy it, that you become a boater, or you're moving up in the boat, that you're in this for years and years and years, that you don't get frustrated in the short term. So that's what we're here for. That's what I see what you're here for is, again, generate that experience, that it's a very, very enjoyable experience for the long term.
Great.
So
Excellent. Thank you so much,
You're
Dave.
welcome. Thank
I
you
really
for the
appreciate your time
opportunity.
and your expertise, and I know everybody with us does too. All right, have a
Sure.
great show.
thank you.
All right,
Take care, all.
that was fantastic. That was fantastic.
Okay.
That was so perfect. I
I hope I wasn't too wordy.
No, you were so